Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today is going to be a really interesting conversation because I have with me Colin Tran. He is the founder and president of an exciting program that's happening over at the University of Alberta. It's called NXT-GEN. And so Colin has created this, has founded this as an opportunity for students to become entrepreneurs and have a support system there right on campus for them. So welcome to the show, Colin. I'm so excited to have you.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be here.
So, Colin, give us a rundown as to what you're trying to accomplish over there with NXT-GEN.
Yeah, absolutely. So at a high level, we started out really just focusing on trying to bring entrepreneurship into the high school level. And that mission has since grown and evolved into what we are now, which is really trying to connect students, that next generation of entrepreneurial leaders, with the ecosystem that's rapidly developing in Edmonton. We're increasingly seeing a lot of really interesting organizations take interest in the Albertan ecosystem, be it accelerators, incubators, more investors. But the thing that we're also noticing from a student perspective is that a lot of the branding of those pieces tend to be for entrepreneurs, as they should be. And students, when they're early stage in that journey, oftentimes have a struggle with identifying and saying, you know what, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm going to go and I'm going to go take that jump. So we're really taking that ecosystem, distilling it down into an accessible piece that helps students launch that entrepreneurial career, demystify and de-risk that path forward.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And you had mentioned that you started, or the original concept was from the high school side of I guess, the education system. So is that something that you were trying to do when you were in high school? Because you are now a university student, and so you just carried it into university with you. Is that the idea, or how did it start, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. And so part of that, the high school piece was when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to compete in a competition called Dragon's Nest, which is essentially Dragon's Den scaled down to kids. No major prize or investment money. But that sort of shaped the start of my career and kind of was like, okay, like entrepreneurship is an actually viable career path. And so that was back when I was in grade 10. Grade 11, I went to go and try and find it to compete again. And the competition had since gone under. There were some funding gaps and also we were in a time at the province where we weren't really sure where things were going. And so that competition had since disappeared. And I'm like, okay, well, let's see if we can do something to revive that. Grade 12 came and went. COVID kind of wrote that one off. So by the time I was in first year university, I'm like, you know what, let's pick this back up. Let's see if we can make this happen. And of course, we were still in the middle of the pandemic. Things were still online. But there was really nothing about that existing or the pre-existing competition that needed to be run in person. So we're like, you know what, let's just pilot this online and we'll eventually take it in person. We've since done that. And now that we're kind of in university, we've opened up the doors to those university students as well. So the core of our programming is still focused on that early stage student, be it in high school or kind of first or second year of university. Okay. But we certainly are welcoming anybody from any background to our program, because we really do believe that we cover something that the school system, both from a K-12 perspective, as well as within the general curriculum of post-secondary, doesn't quite cover in as much depth as I would hope that they would cover. Yeah. And so we are taking that different angle and opening up a different perspective on the world of business.
So I'm an alumni of the University of Alberta's business program. And at the time when I was going through it, there wasn't any entrepreneurial stream. You couldn't take entrepreneurship. There was, I think, one class is all that there was available. And I took that one, and that was it. And then I know now that they've expanded that into its own stream. So you were saying that you're finding that what is happening at the university from a course level perspective, there are some gaps. What are some of those gaps then that you're trying to fill then with NXT-GEN?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to give full credit to the team that's put together that entrepreneurship stream. They've done a great job. They've built out a full entrepreneurship certificate as well as an entrepreneurship major. And they've made that certificate an interdisciplinary one. I think they're doing all the right things. When we started this, we started ahead of that certificate. And so some of the gaps that I was referencing, they've since been filled by that certificate. But the other thing as well is, what we're finding in terms of people that are going to jump into that certificate are ones that are already to some extent entrepreneurial. And so really the way that I would define where NXT-GEN sits in the ecosystem is it's in that point where you're kind of exploring your career options. You're not sure which direction you want to go, and we're going to bring entrepreneurship to you. It's the same way that we've seen, high school level mock trial. I come from a debate background, so mock trials, model legislatures, model UNs, that type of distilling the ecosystem down into here's that exploratory taste, but we're going to give you enough that even if this is all that you do, if you do come back to it later down the line, you're going to have enough experience and enough knowledge to be able to work your way around it. But that kind of gives you the launching point to jump into things like that more full-fledged entrepreneurship program that the University of Alberta is now offering. And I'm aware other post-secondaries around the province and around the country are offering that as well. But to jump into things like that, to jump into things like Edmonton Unlimited, 500 Global, plug and play, those more meaty accelerators and programs that'll really let you take what we provide and push you to the next level in your career.
Yeah, that's really exciting. And so what are you finding in terms of the background of the students who are coming into NXT-GEN, who are interested and trying to foster a business themselves? Are they mostly business students? Are they coming from all different faculties? What are you finding so far?
Yeah, for sure. Primarily, we're seeing a lot of high school students. We did start there, and we're continuing to see that success there. We are, as it comes to those university students, we are still seeing a lot of business students, which is great. We absolutely encourage business students to continue to participate. But one area that we are trying to expand into are those STEM students, especially in the areas of engineering and computer science. As I see it, that's where our programming really does drive that additional value. Because when it comes to a business student, obviously there's ways within your business degree to take a lot of the information that we're already able to provide. Although, granted, we do have a different spin compared to most of the conventional classes. I think when it comes to that engineer that doesn't otherwise have that business background or doesn't otherwise take business courses, giving that baseline level of information on how the business world works, especially in that startup stage, and especially how we're seeing the technology ecosystem from that startup level grow within Alberta. I think it's absolutely critical to develop that mindset and that skill set when it comes to finding jobs and finding new economic opportunities in the way the province is going.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of support for entrepreneurs, for startups. There's, like you said, there's some accelerator programs, some incubators that are happening within the Edmonton region. And so are you able to effectively tap into that and get some sort of collaboration going, or basically bridging, I guess, the student to industry in some of these industry-focused organizations? Is that something that you're focused on as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do try and work, and we are open to working with as many of them as possible. We've been in conversations with Edmonton Unlimited. We are opening up conversations with others as well. And certainly if there's anybody that I've missed that hasn't been in contact with us already, I'd absolutely encourage them to reach out. But really what we do try and do is bring in as many of those stakeholders and as much of that variety as possible in, so that when that student leaves, it's not a matter of okay, I've only seen one option, or kind of seeing NXT-GEN in a vacuum. It's NXT-GEN as that bridge to that next step, and oftentimes that next step is one of those other programs. So we do try and bring as many of those in as possible, but also recognizing that you don't necessarily have to go through one of those programs. There's plenty of successful entrepreneurs that have come out that kind of just forged their own path.
Yeah.
That's perfectly valid to do as well. But we absolutely want to make sure that we have the supports around them so that they are able to take that next step with as little risk as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that bridge is just a brilliant idea, because I know when, even as a business student, and, I was part of some of the different clubs that faculty had, available at the time. And so there was some interaction with industry. So you weren't just, about the academic world, you were actually able to get out and connect. But there still was not a lot of connections unless you really, really worked hard at it. And so I think anytime that you can have an organization like yours that's really focused on trying to help bridge that industry and post university experience in that with the students, and give them that while they're in their studies, I think it's just really great. Now, in terms of the entrepreneurship, like really trying to help foster and grow these businesses, are most of these students coming in to NXT-GEN with a business idea or a business already kind of started? Or is it more where people are coming in and they're just interested in the topic of entrepreneurship, and so they're wanting to kind of try to discover what might be available or where opportunities might exist, I guess?
Yeah, so the way that I would describe kind of most of what we're seeing is like you're getting people that are interested in it. They're like topically, they understand what entrepreneurship is as a topic. And some of them, because oftentimes we are seeing that higher achieving echelon of students. So oftentimes they've already started doing some of the work there. But the one thing that I found when it comes to kind of that career mapping, seeing where these folks are in their career journey, is you get people that are there and like in that high school stage, you're kind of in that exploration. But versus junior high, in junior high, you really can explore. In high school, they're asking you, what are you doing to kind of get there?
Yeah.
And when it's something like a doctor, well, it's like, oh, well, I volunteered at a hospital. Or, if you're going to try and go into computer science, oh, I started learning how to code. With entrepreneurship, there really isn't that clear path where it's like, okay, this is the next thing that I'm doing right now to get going. And the way that I see it with us is we're offering that. And so we oftentimes are, if not the total first step, a very early step in kind of around, junior achievement, I would say, is very much in a similar space, different angle, but similar space.
Yeah.
And we're partnered up with them. They do great work.
Yeah.
But kind of in that same space, that first step into entrepreneurship, seeing what's that first taste that you're going to get. That's usually the type of student that we're seeing walk in. Although we've certainly seen students that are further along in that journey. And I'd like to think that we've been able to support those students as well in advancing that journey and advancing that network into the broader business community.
Yeah. So, Colin, I'm curious about your background. Do you come from a family of entrepreneurs, or where does this excitement for entrepreneurship really come from? Is that something that is just a natural curiosity, or yeah, do you have that background?
Yeah, so I actually don't come from that background. I do come from an immigrant family. Both of them, both my parents had a career in the public service. So very much the opposite of entrepreneurship in that sense. That said, I've always been drawn towards taking risks, smart risks, not just jump in and do something crazy, but taking smart, educated risks, as well as just pushing myself further. And eventually, as I mentioned, I did come from that debate background. I started looking for use cases to apply that public speaking. I started off where I'm like, you know what, let's go and become a politician. And then I realized that's a lot more, there's a lot more to it than just talking. You got to have that passion for a very specific issue. And there's a much broader game to play. And I realized, you know what, that's not something I want to launch my career into.
Yeah.
Although I did spend some time at the Alberta legislature as a page. And then I was like, okay, law. Let's see what law is going to get me to, and that's still potentially on the roadmap. But it really was that initial competition back in high school that I did competed in and won, and that really set off the light bulb where it's like, hey, I can talk in this, and I can take risks, and I can be innovative, and I can kind of forge my own path, and be my own boss and do my own thing. And that was really appealing to me at the time. And I kind of just doubled and tripled down on that. as the years went on. And that's kind of what led me to the position I'm in now, which is, I wouldn't say I'm, full fledged into that into that entrepreneurship space where I'd say like, yep, you look at me, that's an entrepreneur. But very much more integrated in that startup community where I can say, you know what, yeah, I know what's going on with a growth stage enterprise.
Yeah. So when I was in high school, I had the opportunity to participate in an entrepreneurship program there. And so it was through the full 3 years of high school. So education, and then, lots of mentorship and coaching and stuff. And then, the planning and public speaking and research and everything else, right? So we had all the basics, and then we had to actually create a business at the for our grade 12 year, so our third year into it, and it was kind of like a pass or fail. If you made $1, you passed, essentially, if you got this business launched and was able to actually generate some revenue. And so it was a really great experience. One of the things that I've always said when I mentor other entrepreneurship programs at the high school level is now is the time for them at that age to take risks. So you mentioned risks, and you want to be smart about it, like you said, but they don't have the same kind of responsibilities and the mortgage and all of the other issues that come later in life when you start to have that family and so on that you're trying to take care of. And so a lot of times that's a bit of a stumbling block or a barrier for people who want to be entrepreneurial or who have great ideas, who want to try to explore it. And so do you find that right now with the students that you're working with, where they feel that now is the time, that there's this extra excitement because they can take those risks on?
Yeah, for sure. And I think we're at the right time. Just kind of even looking at the broader ecosystem in general, where we are as a city and as a province talking more about entrepreneurship. I came through high school, admittedly not that long ago, but when I was going through it, the predominant narrative was still very much oil and gas. Now we were starting to, to see that drift into the tech world, but right now we're seeing the province start to talk more about it. We're starting to see the schools talk more about it, and as a result, we're starting to see the students talk more about taking that risk. They do recognize that they don't have the family obligations, they don't have the mortgage, they don't have those types of things. But there's also a lot of fear to that. There's a lot of, well, if I do this, what about my dreams of becoming a doctor? Because that's what I was told was the right path to be. Or what about like I've got like zero financial resources. I barely have $1 to my name right now. How am I going to take that first step, and where do I start going? And I think that's where it's really important that programs like NXT-GEN, like Junior Achievement, like the program you were referencing in high school, are really important to say, you know what, you're in a position where you can take those risks, and here's how you take those risks in a smart manner, to keep the risks as low as possible while still going down that path. Because really, when it comes to something like medicine or law, or really any an accountant, any other form of like more, what I would say is like the more conventional style of career, even something like the trades, if you take those steps, there's really not a lot of risk at any point along the way to get there. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, there's kind of this interesting mindset where you have to take the jump. Everyone's always like, take the leap, take the jump. And really where I'm trying to change that narrative is, how do we take that jump and turn it into a bunch of smaller steps that makes it more accessible for a student to say, you know what, now I can start. And then when they eventually do need to take the jump and take the leap, that it's not a total leap of faith. It's okay, I've taken enough steps to know what I'm doing. Now I can do that. And so they might not start a startup straight out of high school, and majority of them probably will not. But really what we're trying to do is empower them to say, you know what, 5 years, 10 years, even 20 years down the line when they're in their career, to say, you know what, I've got an idea. I want to be able to get this started, and I have this experience, and I know what's going on. Or maybe it's, hey, somebody's approached you from a growth stage startup where they're saying, hey, we've got an opportunity for you to join us. Are you interested? And they're not going to be totally shocked by, a fast-paced, turbulent environment where priorities are changing every 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So we're really trying to create that baseline, not just for that student that wants to jump into entrepreneurship, but for that student that eventually wants to have that option of working for a smaller company, or starting that smaller company that they're able to help grow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a really great point that you're making there, because not everybody is going to necessarily become an entrepreneur themselves, but really trying to help them understand and appreciate and be able to navigate through their career with an entrepreneurial, thought process or approach to their day-to-day is really, really powerful and also valuable for employers. Because I know, like with my company, I love to hire people who have that entrepreneurial energy to them, and you get a different level of engagement, I think, from an employee who understands entrepreneurship and who has a little bit of experience being entrepreneurial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've seen it as well, in my work capacity with Trust Science. I've seen it, in terms of people that have talked with me after the fact, after hiring people out of the NXT-GEN program, where they're like, yeah, we want the kids that actually get it.
Yeah.
And especially, like, honestly, no matter what stage of the company, what stage the company's at, like, even if you're like an Enbridge, where you're like, the Enbridge is about as established as you're going to get. Those companies are always continuing to innovate.
Yeah.
And there's always, at least a subset of that company that will be focused on innovation. And that subset is almost always hiring. And so having students that are able to come out with that innovative mindset and be able to contextualize it in a manner that eventually the board of directors is going to be able to understand, is a really powerful skill set, not just for startups, but for really any type of innovative position at any type of organization.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Now, our audience is made up of entrepreneurs, a lot of them that are here in the Edmonton area. And so is there any way that you would like our audience to be supporting NXT-GEN?
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for more partners. We'd always love to have more of our community get engaged, start to engage with these students, mentor these students. What I'd encourage anybody that is interested in participating, or getting involved in any way, shape, or form, be it financially or with their time, to just give us an email at nextgen@ualberta.ca. That's NXT-GEN at ualberta.ca. And I'm happy, Lance, to get that to you in writing as well, so we can have that somewhere. But yeah, that's probably the best way to go about that. As well, I'm happy to connect with anybody on LinkedIn and have those conversations there as well.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming by today to talk to us a little bit about the program. I think it's just exciting anytime that we can get students, into the ecosystem as early as possible. I think we're just better for it, because they become better employees if that's the route that they want to go, or if they're going to be creating some of these next innovative companies that are going to be, employers and help drive our economy forward here. And so a stronger, more vibrant community of entrepreneurs at every stage of their life is a good thing. So thank you for doing the things that you're doing there to stimulate that at the university level.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. And we look forward to seeing what the next generation has in store for us.
Most indeed. Well, and this is a wrap up for this particular episode. And if you enjoyed this as our listener or viewer, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca and you're going to be able to find our full archives there. And if you're watching but you would prefer to be listening to it because you want to be out and about and going around, we are on all the major podcasting platforms. So just search Amplify Your Business and you'll find us there. Until next time, have a prosperous day.